Welcome back. This evening we are talking, as you know, about guns in America and if the state of New York's new gun laws just passed are going to make the Empire State any safer. And for more, we're now pleased to be joined by Dr. John Eterno. The doctor is Director of Graduate Studies in Criminal Justice at Malloy College, and he's also a former NYPD police captain. Doctor, thanks for a few minutes.
You're welcome, Richard.
I know there's no perfect panacea, but did Albany take a step in the right direction here? Is this legislation going to make New York, in your estimation, a safer place?
They certainly did take a step in the right direction. There are still a lot of questions with what's going to happen. First of all, it's just New York State, and that's the weakness of this. Certainly a nationwide bill is absolutely necessary before anything substantive is going to be done. While New York State can do certain things, certainly the issue of gun running from other states is going to be a major issue for New York State. So any guns from other states, particularly southern states which have less gun control, would certainly find its way to New York City, and has in the past and will continue in the future.
And if you could explain a little bit more, when people say, oh, well, every state should make up their own mind, they talk about that iron pipeline, right, Doctor? For example, from North Carolina, where you can do a straw sale, and then the guns will end up on streets of New York City or Philadelphia or other places. If you don't have a one-size-fits-all, at least in the main for this country, it's almost like, you know, Band-Aids, state to state.
Absolutely, and that's the big problem. What this does, actually, is it makes it very lucrative for gun runners. Guns in New York State will be worth far more money because they're less available. So the gun runners are actually presented with more incentive to bring the guns to New York City through other states. So without a nationwide ban of some sort, at least the strengthening of the laws, this will continue to be a problem.
You know, one of the things, Doctor, when we have these conversations, I sometimes see the reaction on people's faces when we talk about what the various stakeholders in this debate say or think. And when you see groups like the Fraternal Order of Police and law enforcement groups who stand with a lot of these mayors to say, you got to do something about it, or famously that police chief in Jersey City, Chief Comey, after 3 of his guys were shot, who had said enough is enough. Nobody's going to confuse cops with bleeding hearts, but when I say these are some of the things like armor-piercing bullets or assault weapons on the streets or body armor, law enforcement, I mean, you're much closer to it than I am, they feel at times that they're outgunned by the bad guys.
Well, they certainly are. The guns that are available out there are far more than the typical police officer. A typical police officer carries a Glock weapon, which is a semi-automatic weapon. It does fire 15 shots, the typical, with one in the chamber, so it's 16 rounds altogether, and usually they'll carry a couple of other clips with them. It's a handgun. They can certainly be outgunned by any of these assault weapons at any time. So the type of weapons like a AK-47 or something of that nature in a place like Times Square would certainly present police with a very difficult situation at best.
And, I mean, using that incident tragically on the Empire State Building not that long ago, the argument that the more guns, the better. The way to stop a bad guy is with a good guy with a gun. It doesn't always work that way like it does in the movies, does it?
You're 100% on the money on this. Look, we license people for driving a car. I see no reason why we shouldn't license people for carrying a firearm. And this would mean substantial background checks and making sure that the people who have these weapons are carefully vetted through our system. So the idea that we should just arm the public to the max seems to me to be quite ludicrous as a solution to the problem.
Dr. Eterno, I really appreciate a few minutes. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Richard, anytime.
We were talking about messaging, guys, right before the break. And to me, a couple ones jumped out, as I just said to him. When I heard General McChrystal say, hey, listen, those guns, the assault weapons, they belong, you know, basically in the war theaters of Iraq, Afghanistan. They don't belong in the streets of Kansas City or whatever. I could see somebody, I saw it when we had the conversation, they go, oh, the general said that? Or you see a police chief. Blame Bloomberg, we talked about this all the time. It carries a different weight. In certain parts of the country, they got to turn the channel. Bloomberg, what did he know, right? He's never hunted, doesn't have a gun rack in the back of his truck. What does he know? Do you think there's a way that if the right faces and the right PR campaign, like the MAD campaign, made it uncool to drive drunk here, and smoking was made uncool, that could change perception in this country?
No, I think absolutely. I think you're really dependent on people who strongly believe in the Second Amendment, but also see that we need reasonable and sound and safe gun regulations. I mean, you're dependent on people who understand both sides of the coin and are looking for a reasonable, moderate solution. And until and unless those people go forward, it'll be very hard for Congress to pass legislation, and we will be looking at executive orders.
Richard, John Wayne himself could come back from the grave and say that guns are not a good thing, and supporters of the Second Amendment will go, John Wayne, you are 1,000% wrong. I'm sorry, Dean.
No, but
there's nothing anyone can do
but the
that's going to
question
get
is,
the NRA
but
to
the
change.
question is, it all comes down to if they're going to get reelected or not, or if they're going to get money or not. And Andrew, I can give 3 or 4 analogies. If Bloomberg decides instead of going after all these guys, he's going to help every Republican, he's going to help them pay for whatever their primary fight's going to be here, instead of spending $250 million in ad campaigns, I bet you that would buy some support. Secondarily, if the parents of the Newtown victims went up to Washington and held a press conference, if I saw police officers or the widows go out and say, my husband shouldn't have been outgunned in the streets of fill in the blank, I think that will change some minds. The same argument could be had about a lot of different health consequences in the country. You can never take on the tobacco industry. Look how many people don't smoke now as a result of what they did before. I think minds can change.
I'm with you on victims. I'm with you on the loved ones of victims. That's where we see changes in attitude. That's why we have this opportunity right now, because people have opened up to the possibility in the wake of Newtown like they did after Virginia Tech. Anything else, I don't think is going to get through. It's not that Republican lawmakers are so deathly afraid of the NRA. They're deathly afraid of their primary voters. And that's because you've been telling them for generations that any attempt to restrict guns is the government coming to take your guns, and it's the beginning of some sort of totalitarian state. It's gotten to that level. I don't think that works anymore. I don't think you can have experts. I don't think you can have law enforcement saying it. I think it's got to be from the heart. It's got to be the people who have lost.
All right. Please, everyone at home, keep the conversation going online. Go to our Facebook page and Twitter and sound off. If you were the president, what would you do about guns? We'll find out soon enough this Thursday. We take a quick break. But when we come back, we're going to ask why and how so many of the falsehoods that we talk about on this show, from a president who's not really an American to death panels and all these things, how do these things go from complete falsehoods to fact in some corners of this country? We'll talk about that after this.